Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you all. So today we're going to be talking about something big that dropped yesterday, or I guess technically about a day and a half ago, but that's going to be the ban list update that I believe should be going in effect beginning on June 8th. Fun fact, that's actually just 2 days before the MCS Invitational, the big tournament. So we're getting a brand new list dropped on us that will be in effect, again, just a couple of days before that tournament, which I think most of us thought that this was probably going to happen, but still going to be a huge shakeup for that regardless. So there have been quite a few changes to this list. Some people are rejoicing, others people are not as excited about, but in either case, we're going to go through and talk about all of the changes that have been made to the ban list and the potential ramifications that could have for the metagame moving forward. So, for those of you who haven't seen the actual announcement itself, let me go ahead and just back out to notifications, because normally I just like to do it on this screen, but I thought this time I might like to have the cards for actual, visual representation. But as you can see, we have 3 cards getting banned: Cyber-Stein, Smoke Grenade of the Thief, and Terraforming. We have 3 cards that are going to be limited as well. That's going to be Kaldo the Sacred Protector, Mudor the Sword Oracle, Agito the Ancient Sentinel. Cards that are being semi-limited are going to be Sprite Blue, Girsu the Orcus Mech Knight, Nadir Servant, Metaverse, and Cyber Angel Ben 10. So let's go ahead and go back to this again, more just like kind of visual screen again. I just like having the visuals when I'm talking about a card. So let's start by talking about the bans, of which there are 3 this time around. 3 hits is huge. 3 cards going to 0, that is. It's not very often we have even 1 card going to 0, so to see 3 cards getting banned all in one fell swoop is definitely saying something, and I think most of these cards are, people are fine seeing leaving. That's of course going to be Cyber-Stein is going to be one of the bigger culprits. Cyber-Stein, funny thing about Cyber-Stein and then also Smoke Grenade, neither of those cards are actually banned in the OCG. Both of those cards are actually still, I believe Stein is at 1 and Smoke Grenade is at 3 over there, so we're seeing some unprecedented hits, kind of in terms of Master Duel, as it does typically follow the OCG ban list more closely. We're seeing some pretty major deviations here. Let's talk about Cyber-Stein first. So this card's obviously getting hit due to its recent prevalence in tier limits, and not even just in tier limits though, like in general, this card's ridiculous. It never should have come back. I can't believe this card ever came back to 1 without getting errataed or nerfed somehow. Not that I'm in support of that, but I think in that case this card definitely should have stayed banned. 5,000 life points, as we've seen many times, both like here on the channel and personally in our own individual games as well. 5,000 life points is definitely not enough of a deterrent for people to want to jam this card and then run out some pretty insane stuff. Now, one thing I think is kind of interesting is that this card getting banned is not actually going to be that much of a major hit to tier limit decks at all, where it's currently being primarily featured. Indeed, I think most tier limit decks, or at least about half of them, don't even run this card. But all the same, and this is going to be true of a couple of hits we're going to see here on the ban list this time around, even though this card isn't like particularly defining the most dominant deck, it's still just an unfun card to play against. It just feels bad, right? And I think for that reason, it definitely needs to go. A card can be individually overpowered without, it single-handedly being the reason that the deck it's in is overpowered. And that's the case with Cyber-Stein. Again, tier limits without Cyber-Stein, still going to be completely fine. However, Cyber-Stein is still an extremely powerful addition. This is also just one of those cards that's very game-deciding the instant it hits the board, right? Regardless if the effect fires or not, because if it does fire, obviously your opponent gets Extrio or Kick Close or Roll Close or some very powerful fusion monster. But if you manage to negate it, then your opponent's probably just going to lose the duel because they just paid 5,000 life points, which is a lot to do nothing. So it's just one of those very swingy cards, and not in a good way. By swingy, I mean when this card hits the field, one player is probably going to lose very, very soon. Again, most often the opponent of whoever played Cyber-Stein, but if Stein gets negated, the player who used it as well. I don't think many people are sad to see this card go, and I think indeed we're going to have a better format as a result of this card going to 0. I think that's generally true of Smoke Grenade of the Thief as well. I personally am a little devastated by this hit, because as you can see, I have not 1 but 2 Royal Smoke Grenades, and I'm not going to get refunds for either of them. Yay! Or my 4 Cyber-Steins, or my 3 non-royal smoke grenades either. But it's really just having to see these 2 now banned royals in my collection for that's making me go, ah, oof. But, you know, as an overall hit to the format, this is not exactly like Cyber-Stein. This is actually not seeing nearly as much play as Cyber-Stein right now, but it's very similar to Stein in that even if this card is not making decks overpowered by being included in them, it's still an overpowered card. Notably with Power Tool Braver Dragon, this is just a hit to the Braver package overall, right? Because that's obviously all about hand ripping with Smoke Grenade of the Thief. Without Smoke Grenade of the Thief, Power Tool Braver Dragon definitely sees much less play. I would argue pretty much 0 now outside of an equip-focused deck. And that doesn't really hurt Tearlaments or really any other deck that's like a major contender in the meta. There's like Adamancipator, which didn't even always play the Smoke Grenade package. Same with like Naturia's, like Naturia Venuself. I think I was, I'm not gonna say the only one, but I think I was one of a few people who were actually playing the Braver package in that deck. So yeah, I mean, the decks that were using this card and using it for hand ripping with Braver, again, might not have been that prominent, but I think it's still fine for this card to go to 0. Again, even though I do have 2 royal copies, no, I think this card definitely should still get banned. That is completely fine. The other ban is frankly a little more, I don't want to call it baffling. I don't necessarily think it's baffling, but it's a lot more divisive, let's say. And that's going to be the ban of Terraforming, which I did not see coming. I don't believe this card is banned in either the TCG or OCG. I believe it is at 1 in both of those formats there. So to see Terraforming now go to 0 it's really interesting. One of the first things that I saw pointed out in like a comment, I think on Reddit, was that something to the effect of like, wow, they managed to hit Flaunderies yet again. So the reason this card is being hit now might actually be partially due to flow. I actually wouldn't be surprised given how much Konami of Japan seems to really just despise that deck. But, you know, obviously it's been seeing a lot more play more recently due to Primeval Planet's Perla Rhino. There's been a lot of discourse I've seen online about whether this is a good hit or not. I'm on the fence. I'm extremely on the fence about it. I don't like it as a Tearlaments hit, let me just say that. Like, as a Tearlaments hit, there definitely could have been a lot better stuff, even if you're going for more generic, non-Tearlament cards. I think there are still other things you could have hit that would have hurt Tearlament more, and not so many other decks. So that's the issue I do have with this hit, right, is that there are a lot of rogue decks that kind of live or die by their field spells, and reducing the consistency of all of those decks fairly drastically by banning Terraforming definitely feels bad for a lot of those decks. And again, I already talked about flow, right? Like Flaunderies, like I don't want to say it's struggling because it's definitely not. It's still a fine deck in this meta, but I'm thinking of that Simpsons meme, you know, we all know the one where stop, he's already dead. That's how I feel about flow now with Terraforming get hit. It's like, Flow's been hit enough. They did not need this. They definitely did not need this. Now, I know a lot of people will disagree because they don't really like the playstyle of Flaunderies, and it's valid not to like the playstyle of it, but like that doesn't mean we have to nuke the deck into the ground and make it unplayable. And I don't think the Terraforming ban makes it unplayable, but like between this ban, between Prosperity getting banned, a map is still at 1, Windbarrier Statue needs to stay banned, that's fine. But all those other hits are definitely huge blows to Flaunderies, and it's definitely not as much of a hit to Tearlaments as, you know, it is to a lot of those other decks. Now, the one thing I will say kind of in support of Terraforming's banning is that we are going to see more field spells in the future that'll be doing a lot for certain archetypes. I think that's a given, outside of just stuff like Kashira that we know is coming. But, like, it's not uncommon at all for a deck to get a very powerful field spell to kind of help support it. And in that regard, Terraforming might have been on a limited clock anyway. Like, I do think there reaches a point, I think we are a lot closer to it than some people realize, where there are too many good field spells for Terraforming to be allowed. That said, the timing of this hit is still a little weird. I don't think we're quite at that point yet. And like I said, I do think that this ends up hurting a lot of more rogue decks that really rely on their field spell in order to just kind of thrive. So yeah, it's a weird hit. I'm still kind of on the fence of whether I think it's a good or a bad hit. I'll say that there could have been better hits. There definitely could have been better hits if hitting tier limits was their goal by putting Terraforming to 0. But again, maybe they were just looking to overall lower the consistency of decks that are reliant on their field spells. Who knows? So those are the 3 cards that went to 0. Let's talk about some cards that went to 1. They're all going to be Ishizu cards. It's going to be Yugioh the Ancient Sentinel, Keldo the Sacred Protector, and Budor the Sword Oracle. We saw all 3 of these cards get hit to 1. But one that is noticeably absent is Kelbeck, the Ancient Vanguard. So you did not misread. This card is actually staying at 2, while the other 3 here, these are all going to end up going to just 1 copy. So seeing the Ishizu cards go to 1, most of them, is very, very nice. It's definitely something I'm hugely in support of. It's interesting, right? I do think that had the power level overall of these cards been toned down just a little bit through various means, any number of means, I think they could have been very interesting. I do think that the Millers in particular did allow for graveyard-based strategies to kind of thrive in a way they hadn't super often before. It's really just too bad about the shufflers, right? Keldo and Mudora, right? The fact that like such powerful graveyard support literally comes bundled in the same archetype as such exceptionally powerful graveyard hate is just not gonna ever be good for the metagame. And honestly, overall, these cards are just too powerful. They are too tuned. They are just too strong for what they do. And too generic, frankly. Like, we saw that even before tier limits hit. There were so many different decks, including just 60-card pile decks that were making very strong use of these Ishizu cards. So, I do think that they all should have gone to 1. It's interesting, though, that Kelbeck went to 2. And I've seen some various kind of speculation about why this is the case. A lot of people with a more cynical take are just kind of saying, like, oh, this card is at 2 because it's an ultra rare, that's why they didn't hit it. But I kind of don't think that's the case, because we did see Keldo go to 1, that's an ultra. We also saw Terraforming an ultra get banned, kind of out of left field. So I don't necessarily think it's because Kelbeck is an ultra that it didn't get hit. That might be a factor, certainly. I think, if I had to guess, I mean, who knows what Konami's thinking with some of these decisions, really, but if I had to guess what they're thinking about Kelbeck, I think maybe they want this card to be used as like kind of a hand trap. I kind of hesitate to say generic because it's technically generic, but it's really meta dependent on when this can be useful as a hand trap, and also deck dependent as well. I don't know, maybe they have this idea that because we're in a meta where cards are being sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard a lot, that Kelbeck is actually fine as a disruption tool because it's happening so frequently. That, of course, that theory does ignore the fact that tier limits, the deck that it mainly looks to counter, is the one mainly also using Kelbeck for that reason. But aside from, again, just the more cynical take of they didn't hit it because it's ultra, which again does not apply to other cards on this list, I do think that this has probably been left at 2, again, just to be used as a more generic disruption tool. I think that's a mistake, though. I think they all should have gone to 1. That said, I don't think Kelbeck at 2 is... I don't think it'll be too bad. At least it wasn't one of the shufflers, right? Like, if Keldo had been the one to stay at 2, I would have been much less optimistic about these hits moving forward. But because it's Kelbeck, I'm like, it's slightly more fine. I have to emphasize slightly more fine. But the rest of these cards going to 1, absolutely great. Absolutely fantastic hit. Now, here is the big question. Is tier limit still going to be tier 0 with these hits? We're actually going to talk about that more in what will probably be tomorrow's video, if not tomorrow, in a couple of days. I'm going to be doing a tier list prediction. We're going to be going over what the post-ban list meta is going to look like, and we'll get into it more there. I've been thinking about it, though, and I think the long and short of it is that tier limit is still going to be the best deck. As for if it's going to be tier 0... maybe? I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but well, again, we'll break it down a lot more in our like meta prediction video. That's more of a discussion for that. But yeah, those are all the cards that went to 1. So we had 3 cards go to 0, and then the 3 Ishizu cards that went to 1. Again, not all 4, just the 3. And the rest is going to be semi-limits. So the semi-limits are going to be I'm going to go through some of the easier ones first, right? Like Yugioh, this card is fine to go at 2. Orcus aren't really doing anything at all, so I don't think it's a bad idea at all to give them another tool to help them. Ben 10 to 2 is fine. It's been a long time since Drytron has been a dominant deck or even like positioned in the meta at all. Indeed, right after Ben 10 went to 1, Drytron honestly just completely fell off as a deck, going from like tier 1 to rogue tier, where that decidedly has been since then. Yeah, I think Ben 10 going to 2 is completely fine. Nadir Servant, I don't think I've ever had somebody even activate this card against me in Master Duel, so I don't know why it's at 1 except for, you know, just being being better in an older format. This card is obviously completely fine to go to 2. I don't think anyone's ever once even activated this against me in Master Duel, so it being at 2 is a bit odd. Metaverse. So Metaverse actually went from 1 to 2 during this same ban list, presumably because, you know, we just had Terraforming get banned. So Metaverse definitely plays a much different role from Terraforming. It's not a consistency tool in the same regard, because these decks that want their field spells very often want them on turn 1. Metaverse, you obviously have to set it because it's a trap card. You can't just play it from your hand. So it's much slower. I would argue that this card is not useful at all for searching field spells from deck to hand, but more useful for activating them directly from your deck as a disruption tool. So, you know, this card was something like Necro Valley or Zombie World or Secret Village of the Spellcasters. I think this card works fine with those kinds of field spells. You might see decks playing those field spells use this card now, but this is another card, much like Nadir Servant. I don't think I've ever had somebody activate this against me once in the entire time I've played Master Duel. And I don't expect this card going to 2 to really change that, honestly. Again, stun decks might make use of this at 2 copies to, like, again, activate Necro Valley or Zombie World on the opponent's turn, but that's pretty much it. So let's talk about the big semi-limit, which is going to be Sprite Blue. Sprite Blue is going from 3 copies down to 2. It's the only card on the semi-limit list getting, you know, knocked down. How do I feel about this as a hit? It's obviously a consistency hit. We know how much Master Duel does tend to love their consistency hits. So Sprite isn't going to get majorly affected as a deck, in my opinion, in terms of its power level by this. I think it's a bit of an odd hit, though, I won't lie. I really expected Elf to go to 1 and then eventually 0. Was kind of like in my head what I was thinking was going to happen with the Sprite hits. So to see Blue go from 3 to 2 before Elf gets touched at all is surprising. It's also surprising because Jet, Sprite Jet is not only the one that got hit to 1 in the OCG, but it's also a super rare in Master Duel. This is another reason why I don't think that Kelbeck didn't get hit because it's an Ultra is necessarily a valid argument, because Sprite Blue is an Ultra that definitely got hit when Jet, the Super, is more available. Now, obviously, Blue is much more prominent, not just in pure Sprite, but in Sprite variants. This card is pretty much always played at 3 in any deck that Sprite cards are used in the main deck, whereas Jet really does flux between 1 to 3 copies. It very much depends on how dedicated of a Sprite deck you are. So in that regard, I mean, Blue is the more impactful hit. I guess I'm just surprised still that Blue was the card that got hit and not Jet or Elf. I really expected it to be one of those two, or maybe even Starter down from 2 to 1. I'm like, on this hit. I'm personally not that much of a fan of it because I really like Sprites, and I think this consistency hit it's not like gonna kill the deck, but it's really annoying. I almost would have rather had Elf go to 1, as weird as that sounds, than Blue go to 2, just because that makes the overall strategy of Sprite. Blue going to 2 makes it the overall strategy a little bit less consistent, whereas Elf going to 1 really just kind of limits their end board. I don't know, it's just an interesting hit. This might be an indication that we're finally going to get Sprite Sprint, their other link too that still hasn't come out yet. Oh, we might get that at some point in the future. This might be a bit of a preemptive hit in that regard. This feels very similar to when Algebra went to 2, where it's like, it's fine, I guess, but it didn't really need to happen, and I don't necessarily think that it's going to like make a major impact on the deck. It's just going to be a little bit annoying for people playing it. It's just going to be that kind of a consistency hit. So that pretty much covers everything as far as the cards getting hit. We talked about each of them and how impactful each of those hits will be. Overall, this ban list is like fine, I guess is my opinion on it. It's like, it's not a terrible list. Like, there were things I got addressed that needed to, namely Stein going to 0, Smoke Grenade going to 0, and 3 of the Ishizu cards going to 1, as well as a lot of these semi-limits as well. Those are all fine. Sprite Blue going to 2, again, is fine. I'm not personally thrilled by it, but I don't necessarily disagree with it as a hit. Terraforming is going to be the big one. I'm still, like I said, on the fence about it, but I think it's a weird hit regardless. And then, I mean, I guess, like I said, that pretty much covers all the hits there. So, definitely don't be afraid to let me know what you think of this ban list update in the comment section below. You've heard me babble about what I think for the last 20-ish minutes, so definitely only fair that you all get to put in your 2 cents there as well. But I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. Let's just move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.